Have you ever wondered what truly happens when a narcissistic individual is left alone? No audience, no admiring eyes, no words of praise. Behind the curtain of absolute confidence, flawless appearance, and intoxicating charm often lies a reality that is chilling. A private world full of inner conflict, pain, and behaviors that seem straight out of a psychological thriller. In today's video, we're going to dive into a sensitive yet incredibly important topic in the realm of personal psychology: 6 deeply disturbing behaviors narcissists often display when they're alone. This isn't a video meant to judge or sensationalize, but rather a journey into the depths of the human psyche, where unhealed wounds can quietly morph into dangerously persistent patterns. Drawing from scientific research, clinical observations, and real-life accounts, I'll help you understand why these behaviors emerge, what they represent within the psychological framework of a narcissist, and most importantly, what we as people in their orbit can do to protect ourselves in a healthy and empowered way. If you've ever been a victim of psychological manipulation, felt emotionally drained in a toxic relationship, or are simply curious to understand what lies beneath the surface of narcissistic behavior, stay with me until the end of the video, because the final section will offer you a holistic, empathetic perspective that just might change the way you view this issue forever. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video if you find the content valuable, and share it with those who might need a clear understanding of the complex dynamics in their relationships. Together, we can build a community that's informed, resilient, and rooted in compassion. 1. The mirror becomes a stage for ego obsession. When the spotlight fades, the applause dies down, and no one is watching their every move. Many narcissists enter a peculiar state. They seek themselves in the reflection of a mirror. This isn't merely about checking their hair or outfit. It's a deeply personal ritual where the mirror becomes the only tool that helps them sustain their inflated sense of self. They might spend a long time standing in front of the mirror, not just to admire, but to obsessively affirm their self-worth. Whispered self-praise, repeated affirmations like a mantra, "I'm amazing, I'm unique, no one compares to me," are all desperate attempts to fill the void left by the absence of external validation. To the narcissist, the mirror doesn't reflect an image, it reflects an illusion. Every facial expression, every movement becomes a subject of scrutiny and enhancement. They may even record themselves on video, watching it repeatedly in an attempt to recreate the sensation of being admired, even if it's only by themselves. In psychology, this behavior is seen as a form of emotional self-stimulation, where grandiosity and deep insecurity coexist in a closed loop. They keep adjusting, checking, fixing, because their inner world cannot tolerate the presence of imperfection, even when no one else is looking. Here, you can witness a critical truth. Narcissists don't just live to be admired by others. They also need to play the role of their own audience, performing in a never-ending show called "I am the center of the universe." 2. The inner monologues of torment. Picture a room filled with silence. No conversation, no watchful eyes, no more likes or words of praise. This is not peace. For the narcissist, it's when the storm begins. In that stillness, they launch into a stream of internal monologue. Not to self-soothe or reflect, but to wage a quiet war between two conflicting selves. An idealized version of themselves, inflated to godlike status, and a wounded, fractured, shame-ridden reality. A narcissist can sit for hours, repeating affirmations as if trying to reinforce the crumbling monument of their self-esteem. "I will be great, no one can replace me, people are just jealous. It's not because I'm wrong." But in the next breath, a surge of self-directed rage might erupt. "You're a failure. No one truly cares. Everything about you is fake." This internal conflict isn't shallow. It strikes at the root of a divided soul. Narcissists often forbid themselves from showing weakness around others, so when they're alone, the buried pain resurfaces, erupting into dramatic and chaotic self-talk. Some may even speak in third person, as if conversing with a different version of themselves. The hero and the villain, trapped in the same body. From a clinical perspective, this reflects a complex defense mechanism. Idealization and devaluation of the self occur simultaneously, swinging back and forth like two ends of a psychological pendulum. They need to self-praise to counteract the sense of worthlessness, but when those praises lose their effect, they spiral into self-loathing. More importantly, these words, those silent, cut deep like invisible knives turned inward. Every solitary moment becomes a form of psychological torture, and because no one sees this side of them, The outside world only perceives a confident, charming, successful persona, while the internal world is slowly decaying. The sad truth is this: narcissists are never truly at peace, not even when they're alone, because their greatest enemy isn't someone else. It's themselves. Once the mask falls away and they're left with a self they don't know how to love. 3. Social media and the illusion trap. In an age where social media has become inseparable from daily life, it opens a virtual gateway for narcissists, a place where they can feed on attention, admiration, and a curated identity, validated by likes, comments, and shares. But what happens when there's no one left to bask in that spotlight? When the screen becomes their only source of satisfaction, the narcissist slips into a subconscious addiction that's impossible to break. As someone with no one around to nourish their ego, they obsessively monitor digital metrics. How many likes, how many comments, whether a certain person viewed or reacted to their post. Every notification is like a tiny hit of validation, making them feel seen, important, needed. But the reality is far bleaker. Each like and comment is a temporary fix for a fragile ego. And when those numbers no longer satisfy, they chase higher stats, endlessly seeking more recognition. They revisit old posts, not because they matter anymore, but because they serve as evidence of the praise and attention they once received. They may even scroll through the pages of those who used to admire them, searching for traces of past affection to affirm their worth. The danger here is that social media becomes more than a tool. It becomes a stage of deceit. For the narcissist, it's a place where everything can be edited, beautified, and magnified. They craft an image of perfection, no flaws, no failures, so that their followers only ever see the best side. But when genuine interaction fades, and when the numbers fail to satisfy, they fall into a deep void, a hollow emptiness that no amount of digital applause can fill. This leads to a vicious cycle where they wear themselves down, constantly checking posts, obsessing over crafting the perfect photo or caption to please others. When no one reacts or acknowledges them, narcissists often become trapped in an endless loop of seeking validation through artificial numbers. Instead of finding security within themselves, they feel lost and unable to exist without external approval. Worse still, when instant gratification doesn't come, they may spiral into depression or start tracking the activities of those who once admired them, a deeply concerning behavior. This is a clear sign of someone who cannot exist without others' validation, and social media becomes a hall of mirrors in which they desperately chase approval they never truly attain. The deeper they fall into this virtual world, the more disconnected they feel from reality. 4. The silent revenge fantasies. In the inner world of a narcissist, few things cut deeper than the feeling of being overshadowed, betrayed, or rejected, whether that feeling is real or merely perceived. And when there's no one left to validate their worth, they often retreat to another place, their imagination. But this isn't healing fantasy. These are dark, lingering revenge fantasies, silently nurtured in solitude. When alone, a narcissist may spend hours replaying moments when they felt humiliated or dismissed. They don't just recall, they relive every detail: the other person's eyes, their tone, the setting, and most of all, the emotion the narcissist had to suppress in that moment. But this time, in their mind, the roles are reversed. They become the powerful one, the avenger, the one who makes others pay. Sometimes these fantasies are written down not as expressions of emotion, but as revenge blueprints. Some may record themselves speaking, rehearse conversations, or play out entire mental scripts as though preparing for a cinematic confrontation in which they're the protagonist, the wronged hero who rises and crushes everything in their path. From a psychological standpoint, this is a manifestation of repressed rage, left unprocessed. And for narcissists, anyone who has ever wounded their ego, even with a passing comment, can become an enemy in the imagination. The danger lies in the fact that these fantasies do not bring release. Instead, they prolong the anger and reinforce the narrative of victimhood. What makes this behavior especially dangerous is its secrecy and repetition. Without external feedback, with no reality check to temper their rage, they can fall into a hypnotic state, convinced that they are victims of widespread betrayal, that the world owes them an apology, that they have a right to punish. And this blind belief in their fantasies, paired with a sense of entitlement, can lead to real-life manipulation, aggression, and even violence, if the opportunity arises. Even if these plans never materialize, their persistent presence in the narcissist's mind is a clear sign of a psyche that is unhealed, unforgiving, and unable to let go. On the outside, they may continue to smile, charm, and behave politely, but inside, there is a scorched memory, a wound that festers, whispering vengeance in the dark. 5 down on the mask falls, the silent self-destruction in the dark. There is a heartbreaking paradox within the narcissistic psyche that few ever witness. The harder they strive to maintain a flawless image in the eyes of others, the more disconnected they become from their true self. When the social mask is finally removed in absolute privacy, they're no longer acting, but what remains is an overwhelming emptiness. And tragically, they no longer know how to simply be themselves. It's in those moments that narcissists may fall into a pattern of self-destructive behavior as a temporary escape from the nameless pain gnawing at their core. Some turn to stimulants, alcohol, drugs, substances, not for pleasure, but as a desperate way to quiet the condemning inner voice. Others may engage in reckless acts, dangerous driving, sleepless nights, or even self-harm, all rooted in an inability to tame the chaos within. From a clinical perspective, this is a sign of ego collapse. Narcissists are driven by an image of invincibility. They must be impressive, attractive, admired. But when no one is watching, and when those expectations have no anchor, they free fall into a pit of failure, a devastating sense of, I'm not enough, a feeling they've spent their entire lives denying. What makes this form of self-destruction so dangerous is its utter silence. No one knows, no one hears, no one suspects that behind the radiant social persona lies a person who battles every night with invisible wounds. And the true tragedy is this: they're often too afraid to seek help, because admitting their pain would mean the total collapse of the carefully constructed ego. Those around them may only see the controlled, confident, charismatic exterior, never suspecting that sometimes when they're alone in a dark room, that same person is facing a much different version of themselves. Weak, panicked, and unable to go on. This self-destruction isn't just an act. It's a warning bell, signaling that behind the narcissist's manipulative or arrogant behaviors is a soul silently crying for help. And if intervention doesn't come in time, the consequences may extend beyond personal suffering, bringing heartbreak to those around them as well. 6. The ritual of self-worship in the dark. When all the external noise fades, when no one is watching or commenting, do you think the narcissist stops? The truth is they don't. Even in absolute solitude, the narcissist continues to behave as though they're on a stage, but this time, they are their own audience. In the most private moments, narcissists don't simply sit in silence or relax their minds. Instead, they engage in a series of repetitive rituals, staring into mirrors, changing outfits multiple times a day, posing, writing self-praising affirmations, or imagining simulated conversations where they always come out on top. These aren't random behaviors. They are ritualistic responses designed to keep their fragile sense of self from collapsing. Imagine this: every gesture, every whispered phrase is like an invisible rope tightening around their mind, driven by an obsession with themselves. They cannot bear the thought of feeling ordinary, invisible, or unremarkable. So when no one is there to applaud, they become their own cheerleader, in any form they can imagine. Inner monologues, mock interviews, even reorganizing their living space to reflect their ideal self. From a psychological lens, this is a textbook example of ego obsession syndrome, where the individual not only craves admiration but must also control how they are perceived even when no one is watching. It reflects a heartbreaking truth. Behind that proud, confident exterior is a soul so fragile it needs praise every hour, every minute. So much so that it stages an entire performance for an audience of one. Many might find this behavior strange, even laughable, but if we look deeper, it's actually a mirror of profound loneliness. A desperate attempt to preserve the self from total collapse. Narcissists don't merely enjoy admiration, they need it to survive because they've never learned how to love themselves in a healthy, grounded way. We've just taken a journey into a world full of contradictions, a world where external pride conceals internal fear, and where disturbing behaviors are, in fact, the muted cries of a soul that has never known true healing. The 6 behaviors narcissists often exhibit when alone aren't just quirky habits. They are logical outcomes of a life spent hiding emotional wounds beneath a flawless mask. And if you've been in a relationship with someone like this, if you've been hurt, remember this: it is not your fault. They are at war with inner demons they can't even name. If you found this content meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and share this video to spread awareness, compassion, and mental health understanding. Leave a comment below if you have a story or thought you'd like to share. I'm always here to listen.